Hi, everybody. I hope all you be fine and doing well. I would like to thank Dr. Ayla Santi and Dr. Edmund Hayes from the University of Leiden for inviting me to this session. In addition, I would like to thank Dr. Mohamad Mashhadi Nushabandi for his valuable collaboration in publishing some of these materials over the past years. Recently, the result of our collaboration is published as a book titled Shīʿite Material Culture, the reflection of Shīʿite beliefs in the art and architecture of Kashan from the Ilkhanid to the Qajar periods. Today, I'm going to introduce some material culture remaining from the 13th to 15th centuries in Kashan. The region of Kashan consists of two parts of different climates, mountainous and desert. Desert areas are located in the northern and eastern parts, and mountainous climates are located in the southern and western parts. The city is placed in the north of Espan province, north of the Karkas mountain chain, and east of the central Iranian desert, where vegetation is mostly poor. The history of Kashan goes back to the Paleolithic era, as evidenced by its ancient monuments, especially the Sialk Hills, it was one of the civilizational and cultural centers of Iran. In the early Islamic centuries, according to various sources, the people of the city were introduced to a special cultural and religious characteristic that spread to most parts of Iran in the following centuries. That is called Shi'ism. I do not intend to judge Shi'ism in any way in comparison to other Islamic groups, but I believe that the Shi'ism constitute an identifying element of the personality of this city. The Shi'ism of Kashan, Qom, and its surroundings is related to the formation of the Iranian culture of the region, especially the pre-Islamic and Sasanian religious culture. Although this issue should be examined more closely to see what role the environment played in the tendency of the people of this region to Shi'ism, and to what extent other elements were involved, it should not be ignored that despite the tendency towards Sunnism among most of the Iranians in the early Islamic centuries, the cities of Qom, Kashan, Abe, Tafresh, and Farahan had adopted Shi'ism. However, the point is that the reflection of Persian beliefs can also be found in this type of culture, art, and religion. In conflicting and agreeing sources, from the Seljuk period onwards, a type of Shi'ism has been mentioned in Kashan that is closely linked to the people of the streets and bazaars and intertwined with their folk culture. However, according to the survivors, this approach had more opportunity to be reflected in the art and architecture of the Ilkhanid period onwards, especially with the conversion of Ghazan Khan and his successor Ul-Jayto to Islam that provided an opportunity for the spread of Shi'ism. Ibn Hawqal, the Baghdadi geographer of the 10th century, describes the people of Kashan as extremist Shiites. In his An-Naqz, Abdul Jalil Ghazvini Razi, the 12th century Imami Shiite scholar, has provided a lot of information about Shi'ism in Kashan. On the other hand, the 14th century geography Yaqut Hemavi, in his Mu'jam al-Buldan, reports that the ceremony of waiting for the appearance of Imam Mahdi was held in the city of Kashan. They all rode horses every morning and stood outside the city gate waiting for the Imam. One of the old districts of Kashan is Panjashah, or King's Hand, that is named after a shrine with the same name. According to popular belief, it's the burial place of the hand of Abbas, the son of Imam Ali, and it's said that the daughter of Malik Ashtar, the companion of Imam Ali, brought here from Karbala. The Ilkhanid historian Hamdullah Mustafi, in his Nuzhat al-Ghulub, reports that Kashan has about 18 villages, whose people are Sunni. It's interesting that the surviving material culture of the villages of Kashan approve his statement. To my knowledge, with some exceptions like some mihrabs and doors in Qamsar, Eznave, Qohrud, and Mashhad al-Dahal, all the remaining pre-Safavid material culture in the villages of Kashan lack any Shiite content. An outstanding Sunni monument in the vicinity of Kashan is the Seljuk minaret of the Jame Mosque of Nushabad, decorated with the names of the Prophet and the first four caliphs. Moreover, the inscription of a Taymurid Zilu dated 1406, woven by a master from Nushabad, only contains the Quranic surah of Ikhlas. The Ilkhani doors of the Jame Mosque of Barzok and Porzele Mosque in Abyane also contain short Quranic quotations. The underglazed mihrab tiles of Masjid Kalle in Qohrud and a large tombstone of a tailor from Aran also lack any Shiite tendencies. In this occasion, I will introduce 24 Shiite artworks, including such materials as tile, wood, and stone. They have such functions as mihrab, tombstone, mosque door, and endowment deed. The Shiite implications of these objects are Salawat Kabire, Shahadat Salese, Quranic verse of Walayah, Nad Ali prayer, and the name of Imam Ali, not Imam Hussein, as witnessed in the Shiite material culture of the late Safavid period onwards. I will discuss materials which contain inscriptions of these Shiite implications, and finally, some inscriptions from two Ilkhanid Qadamgahs in the region of Kashan will be argued. First of all, Shahadat Salese, or the third testimony. This is the last tile mihrab from Imamzadeh Habib ibn Musa in Kashan that was made by Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Tahir in 1268 and 1271. Its inscriptions contain Quranic surahs of Qadr, Kawsar, and Ikhlas, and Shahadat Salese. Shahadat Salese, or the third testimony, is to testify or witness the Walayah of Imam Ali. It's recited after testifying the oneness of God and the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad as follows. I bear witness that Ali is Wali of Allah. In this small mihrab, only the third part of the Shahada is inscribed in the most important section of the tile. The marginal inscription of a last ceramic tombstone from Bibi Malik Khatun dated 1481 also contain Shahadat Salese. The inclusion of Sadaqallah after the phrase Ali Waliyullah and the two Quranic phrases La ilaha illallah and Muhammad Rasulullah raises doubt for the reader as to whether the scribe has assumed Ali Waliyullah to be part of the Quran, after which he included the phrase Sadaqallah. Salawat Kabira. Among the religious texts, what is mostly reflected is Salawat Kabira. Salawat Kabira is a larger blessing than the usual salawat, and is also common among the Sunnis. However, from the Seljuk period onwards, we see a kind of Salawat Kabira containing a blessing to the Prophet, his daughter, and the 12 Imams. This salawat was reflected in architectural inscriptions and religious artworks rather than the Shiite and Islamic text. To my knowledge, the earliest surviving dated Shiite piece produced in Kashan can be found in the Shrine of Qom. It's the lustre ceramic tombstone dated 1205 and is made by Muhammad ibn Abi Tahir and his son Ali, from the famous Abu Tahir family. Besides Quranic verses from the Surah Al Imran, Mulk, and Ayat al-Kursi, in the outer margin, Salawat Kabir. Another last tile mihrab comes from Imamzadeh Ali ibn Jafar in Qom. It was made by Yusuf ibn Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Tahir in 1313 and 1334. It bears Quranic inscriptions from surahs of A'raf, Hamd, Nasr, and Isra, and the Salawat Kabira. Most importantly is the inscription of Salawat Kabira in a lustre and a turquoise mihrab, one of which is dated 712 AH. The inscription covers the entire surface of the molded turquoise tile without any Quranic or other religious inscription. The last mihrab is not dated, and only on the relief line of the mihrabi arch, the Quranic surah of Hamd is written in a very small script. The stylistic similarities of these two mihrabs lead us to assume that maybe they were produced in the same period and in the same workshop. Perhaps what made the patron or tile maker think of writing this inscription was the date of 712, because the number 12 reminds of the 12 Shīʿite Imams, which is comparable with the stone mihrab of the Qadamgah Farashah in Yazd, dated 512 AH. Therefore, writing Salawat Kabira in religious inscriptions has been a tradition since earlier centuries, but in other mihrabs or tombstones, Salawat Kabira is a part of the inscriptions that comes next to the Quranic verses. Dedicating the entire content of a mihrab to Salawat Kabira was a rare thing until this period, and it's expected that according to the usual tradition, in the mihrab of worship, the Quranic verses would be centered, or at least the salawat appear in the margin of the main inscription. It seems that the religious developments of the era of Qazan Khan and Urjaito, the Shiite tendencies of these two ilkhans, encouraged the artisans and patrons to take such a bold step in Islamic Shiite arts, probably in the city of Kashan, where Shiite tendencies had existed since the early Islamic centuries. Although this became a common trend in the later centuries, especially in the Safavid period, the removal of Quranic verses from mihrabs should not be considered a minor matter. In the 15th century, Salawat Kabira had a prominent role in the mihrabs and monumental tile slabs. In the examples of the Safavid period, Ayat al-Kursi gradually abandoned, and Salawat Kabira became the main invocation. Here, other examples of the use of Salawat Kabira in Pre-Safavid Kashan can be seen. This is the last tombstone of Zainul Abidin and Ala ad-Din Fathullah, dated 1477 and 1478. Fragment of last tile on the floor of Mir Nishan Shrine in Kashan, 1478. Last mihrab tile of Pashanar Mosque in Niyasar, dated 1479. Last mihrab tile from the Jame Mosque of Eznaved, 1493. Last tile from the shrine of Sultan Yalman in Kashan, 1497. Last tombstone of Ustad Ghiasuddin ibn Ustad Nizamuddin Shawwa from the year 1499. All contain inscriptions of Salawat Kabira, whether in the main text or in the margin. This is the tombstone of Imad ad-Din Mahmud Shirvani and his wife, dated 1477. Imad ad-Din was the patron of a large assemblage of public buildings, such as a mosque, khanqah, hospital, madrasa, karvansaray, and clock tower, situated around a paved square known as Meydan Sang. Ustad Khajajan, the carver of Mir Imad's tombstone, carved another undated tombstone for Haji Shah Karim ibn Sultan Murad Ghassab Kashani, and interestingly, beside the Salawat Kabira, there is an inscription of the Shiite Nada Ali prayer. It's said that this prayer reached the ears of the Prophet Muhammad from the unseen world on the day of Battle of Uhud. The prayer is, "Call upon Ali, the embodiment of wonders, and you will find him your helper in your troubles. Every sorrow and grief will be removed by the blessing of your prophethood, O Muhammad, and your guardianship, O Ali." Moreover, in this tombstone, the entire of the Quranic Surah of Insan is inscribed. The 8th verse of each is referred to Imam Ali based on the Shiite sources. The verse is, "And they give food in spite of their love for it to the poor, the orphan, and the captive." The next Shiite implication is the Quranic verse of Walayah. It reads, "Your protector is only God and his messenger, and those who believe, who perform the prayer and give alms while bowing down." The verse specifies three authorities as the only sources of Walayah for Muslims. In Sunni Islam, Walayah is, in this context, signifies friendship or support, whereas Shiites interpret it as a spiritual authority because of its exclusivity. The first two authorities listed in the verse are God and the Prophet Muhammad. In some Sunni sources, the third authority is all Muslims, whereas Shia sources identify the third authority as Imam Ali, citing the occasion of its revelation. Thus, in Shia, the verse sanctions the spiritual authority of Ali over all Muslims after God and the Prophet, and supports his right to succeed the Prophet. Other Sunnis sources link this verse to Ali but reject any Shiite implications. One of the Shiite places of Kashan that was a center of anti-Sunni ceremonies during the Safavid Qajar periods is the mausoleum of Abu Lolo. According to a legend, Abu Lolo, or Firuz Nahavandi, was a Sasanian Persian slave who assassinated Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Islamic Caliph, in November 644, and fled to Kashan after the assassination. In the Mujam al-Tawarikh wal-Qisas, an anonymous work written circa 1226, it's mentioned that Abu Lolo came from Fin, a village near Kashan. The inscription of his last tombstone contains surahs of Hamd and Ikhlas, and then reads, "This is the grave of one of God's righteous servants. May God resurrect him with the one who is his master." It should be noted that at the time, the Muzaffarids, who were Sunni, ruled over the central regions of Iran. This fact makes it easy to accept that the tombstone attributed to the murderer of the second caliph was written ambiguously. Qadamgah refers to some places of pilgrimage in the Islamic world where a prophet, imam, or saint has passed or has been seen in a dream. Dreaming has been one of the main reasons for building Qadamgahs, so that someone saw one of the saints in a dream and based on the saint's order or his own decision called that place a Qadamgah, which literally means the place of foot or the place of stepping. This phenomenon, which sometimes led to the establishment of a building, has been common among Shiites. In some cases, in order to record the dream and to preserve this belief to the future generations, it has been inscribed on tiles, stones, or woods. There is a pair of circular lost tiles in the Musée National de Céramique de Sèvres in Paris, that the text of which mentions the construction of a Qadamgah in Kashan. The text tells us that on the last night of the month Ramadan in the year 1312, a man named Sayyid Fakhraddin Hassan Tabari saw himself in a dream in the midst of a large crowd of men and women in Amir's garden. There he saw a tent with a horse and a camel, as well as a spear stalk in the ground. There he saw Imam Ali and Imam Mahdi, who told him that they were leaving for India to invite the infidels to Islam. Imam Ali ordered to construct a building there, so that anyone who wished to visit him could come to that place. After waking up, went to the Amir's garden and pointed off the footprints of the horse and camel and drew a square measuring 25 by 25 bricks. 2 or 3 days later, 2 men and 2 women in their dreams saw Imam Ali, who ordered them to tell Haydar Fares to build a magnificent shrine there. Fares began work on the building that very day. Another circular tile has also been identified with a slightly larger dimension depicting the same text, indicating that it was a counterpart to the first tile. The first tile is decorated with Imam Ali's horseshoe motif, and the second shows the footprint of the camel of Imam Mahdi. In the center of this tile, there is an image of a camel and a saddled horse in front of a tent, the oval frame of which is in the shape of a camel's hoof. The text in the upper margin reads, "The dreamer, Sayyid Fakhraddin, saw the footprint in his dream at night, and when the day came, he saw the camel's footprint as large as this." According to the text, that building was erected in the garden of Amir, which was attached to the wall of Kashan and in front of the gate of Mehrabad. Previous scholars like Shahryar Adl and Abdullah Ghuchani were unable to find the location of the mentioned Qadamgah. However, thanks to the findings of Muhammad Mashhadi, based on the historical text of the Qajar period, we know that the gate of Malikabad was previously called Mehrabad. Therefore, a ruined domed building in, that's the correct image. Therefore, a ruined domed building in Malikabad with the same size of approximately 25 by 25 bricks can be identified as the mentioned Qadamgah. In the State Museum of History in Tashkent, there is a similar tile. However, it has an important and noteworthy difference from the Sevr Museum tile, which records the date of Fakhraddin's dreams 50 years later in the year 1360. It seems to be a complicated question and a puzzle why 2 tiles with almost identical text were left with 2 different dates. Without mentioning the different dates of these 2 tiles, Shahryar Adl has said some of the faithful residents of Kashan, in order to prove the presence of the Imams in their city, have prepared several copies of the so-called horse footprint and have sent them to the surrounding areas. He has not given any further explanation as to why and for what purpose such a plaque, which tells the story of a person's dream and the construction of a shrine in Kashan, was exported to other cities. It seems unlikely that these tiles have such a function. To understand the logic of these 2 texts that narrate the same event with a time difference of half a century, one must study the tradition of writing a pilgrimage history. In the tradition of writing a history and biography of pilgrimage sites, the same events was sometimes mentioned for 2 places. In fact, the history writers sometimes transferred a text belonging to a specific place to another place that was a belief in its sanctity. For example, near Kashan, the biography of Imamzadeh Suleiman in Nushabad was transferred to the Imamzadeh Suleiman in Faizabad, and the texts of both are identical. Pohrud in the historical periods was on the caravan route between Kashan and Isfahan. The only remarkable survived monuments of this village are two small mosques with architectural decorations from the Ilkhanid period. The first is Masjid Kalle, the most important element of which is a molded underglaze painted mihrab tile that was made by Yusuf from the Abu Tahir family in 1316. Masjid Ali contains a stunning door dated 1301 and hundreds of lustre tiles dated 1300 and 1307. Its ground plan is a square with 4 pillars in the center and is roofed with 9 flattish domes. When Oliver Watson published his article in 1975, there were 2 ceramic tile slabs in the center of the mihrab, but in the later years, they were stolen and found their way into Western auctions. One of them is a turquoise glazed mihrab tile dated 1308, containing the name of the donor Abdul Wahid ibn Muhammad al-Qohrudi. The exquisite door is recessed in the west wall of the building. On the exterior, at either side are set lustre star tiles about stone couches. Although the leaves of the door are not very large, the overall dimensions of the door have reached 275 centimeter in height and 210 centimeter in width, with the addition of several wooden panels on 3 sides. The door contains 30 Persian and Arabic inscriptions in more than 560 words, that is unparalleled compared to its contemporary woodworks. They reveal important information about the building itself and the social and religious situation of the village during the Ilkhanid period. At the end of inscription 3, the name of the woodcarver is recorded. It was written by the weak slave Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Mujiban Naqar al-Isfahani. There is another name in the bottom right-hand corner of inscription 1, work of Ustad Haji. The inscriptions 2, 4, 5, and 8 to 11 are Quranic, and the inscriptions 6 and 7 are Hadith. The Quranic inscriptions, either directly or indirectly, refer to verses about building a mosque, offering prayers, the names of God, the oneness of God, and the truth of his messenger, seeking refuge in God, and etc. In inscription 12, that is a Persian verse with a mystical and moral approach, while referring to inner purity and salutations to the Prophet, it's wished that God accepts the donor, and from the pilgrims of the building, pilgrims or Zairan, and from the pilgrims of the buildings have been requested to offer their prayers. Bringing the word Zair for the visitors of the mosque is interesting. As will be discussed, here was also a pilgrimage site known as Qadamgah, and the word Zair underlines this function. The verse of inscription 13 contains a moral admonition that calls to making people happy, being kind to everyone, avoiding fault-finding, generosity, and at the end asks for praying. Interestingly, close to the door, there is a small chamber which is called Zainabiyya today. It seems plausible to assume that in previous centuries, it was the pilgrimage location of the Qadamgah. What about the donor? The long epigraph containing the name of the founder, similar to the most medieval Iranian inscriptions, is in Arabic and includes his full name and genealogy, Abdul Wahid ibn Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Ali al-Qohrudi. In inscription 3, his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather are introduced with long titles and indicate he and his ancestors were religious scholars. The titles given to Abdul Wahid imply his leading position as a scholar, jurist, and judge. For his father Muhammad and his grandfather Ali, titles such as Sadr al-Sa'id and King of the Ulama have been given. In addition, for his great-grandfather Ahmad, the titles of Qazi and Mufti of the sects have been mentioned. The latter indicates that probably he has been allowed to issue fatwa or formal ruling in both Shia and Sunni sects. Thus, 4 generations of this family were religious scholars, and Abdul Wahid and his great-grandfather also held the position of judge and issuing fatwa. Abdul Wahid has also the title of exemplars of the sheikhs and scholars, which was used for Sufi leaders and sheikhs. Moreover, in the beginning of one of the poems, the phrase La ilaha illahu, there is no God but He, resembles the Sufi literature. Imam Muhammad Ghazali, who died in 1111, considers La ilaha illahu as the monotheism of the elite and La ilaha illallah as the monotheism of the masses. Even the content of the poems in inscriptions 12 and 13 are unrelated to Sufi ethics. About Abdul Wahid's religion, it should be mentioned that although in inscription 1 there are references to Imam Ali and the family of the Prophet, these tendencies were common among the Sunni mystics of this period and alone cannot imply a Shiite belief. Sufism with a Shiite tinge was the most important religious feature of the central Iran during the Ilkhanid period. Both famous Sufis, Kamal ad-Din Abdul Razzaq Kashani and Izz-ad-Din Mahmud ibn Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Tahir Kashani, were Sunnis who adhered to the Shafi'i school of law, but held great reverence for Ali ibn Abi Talib and the Prophet's family. The first inscription contains a poem in 16 baits describing the dream of the donor, Abdul Wahid. The summary of the inscription is that Imam Ali came to Abdul Wahid's dream and ordered the construction of a mosque and marked the location of the mosque, mihrab, minbar, and seghaya, or water reservoir. Then, with the help of some young men, he built the building with the marble stones that were appeared. After waking up, the dreamer, who is Abd Wahid, or a slave of the Ban, starts to build the mosque and seghaya, and at the end he prays to God and asks for the intercession of the Prophet and his family. This revelatory dream can be compared with the inscriptions of the pair of circular last tiles of the Qadamgah Ali in Kashan. There are obvious similarities between the contents of the inscriptions on the door and the last tiles. First, the time affinity that the first one was written in 1301 and the other in 1312. Second, the dream of the presence of Imam Ali in a place that has given both location a Qadamgahi position. Third, ordering to build a mosque and a shrine. Fourth, determining the location of the building in a dream. And fifth, construction of both buildings based on a dream. Of course, there are differences in the two recorded dreams, such as the fact that in Kashan last tiles, the details of the dream are mentioned in intimate prose and in more details, and even with illustrating the scene and depictions of the exact sizes of the footprints of the horse and the camel. Instead, in other parts of Ohrud door, which had more spaces for inscriptions, the donor and his family are more fully introduced. Moreover, in Kashan tiles, the dreamer and the builder are two different persons, as Fakhruddin Hasan Tabari is the dreamer, and Bahauddin Haydar Faris is the builder, but the dreamer and the builder in Ohrud is Abdul Wahid. Another difference which is very important, is the Shīʿite approaches of these two inscriptions that, as mentioned before, Abdul Wahid is more similar to Sunni Sufi with affection for the Shiism, while in the inscription of the last tile, Imam Ali refers to Mahdi Sahib Zaman, the two Shiites' 12th Imam, and its Shiite faith is obvious. In addition to the wooden door of the Masjid Ali, which indicates that the mosque was a place of pilgrimage or Qadamgah, a last tile dated 1335 was also installed there, the subject of which is a Sufi dream in the form of a Masnavi poetry. About half of this tile has been lost, but it can be assumed that it originally contained 26 baits of poetry. The text mentions a stick or asa, which may have been the symbolic axis of this revelation. However, since a major part of this poem is missed, its content is incomprehensible. According to the remaining text, apparently a person whose name and identity is unknown to us has expressed his dream. He refers to the place of revelation, which may be the same mosque. In his dream, he meets Nur ad-Din of Natanz, who was one of the elders of Sufism in the Kashan region during the Ilkhanid period, and a student of Najib ad-Din Ali ibn Bozghosh Shirazi, a direct student of Sheikh Shahab ad-Din Omar Sohrawardi. Two of Sheikh Nur ad-Din's students, Kamal ad-Din Abdul Razak Kashani and Izzad-Din Mahmud Kashani, were also famous Sufis of this period, and they passed away around the year of the production of the last plaque. Therefore, it's possible to assume that the people of this mosque were related to the Sufi congregations that were welcomed in Kashan region. To conclude, the pre-Safavid Shīʿite material culture was mostly produced in the city of Kashan rather than villages. The most common Shīʿite implication was Salawat Kabira. In fact, 14 of the 24 pre-Safavid Shīʿite artworks introduced here contain Salawat Kabira. It was so important that at the beginning of the 14th century, the entire text of some mihrabs was dedicated to Salawat. 5 objects record dreams, which usually refer to Imam Ali. 3 examples contain Shahadat Salase. 3. The verse of Veloyah and the Nada Ali prayer each occur in one piece. Concerning the materials, it's interesting that among 24 discussed examples, 18 are last tiles. It shows that this technique of tile production was more consistent with the sacred content of Shīʿite text, and these tiles were also applied in the Shīʿite holy sites of Mashhad, Qom, Baramin, Najaf, and etc. Thank you for your attention.